Hey guys, tonight we're wandering back, way back, to a time before empires, before writing as we know it, before cities were even supposed to exist. You're standing barefoot at the edge of a slow, wide river, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and flowering reeds. Mist clings to your ankles, soft and cool, as somewhere nearby a bull snorts awake, and a bird with a call like a flute cuts through the stillness. The world is young here, and quiet. This is the Indus Valley, modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, and it's about 5,000 years ago. You probably wouldn't survive this morning without a tetanus shot, but that's part of the charm.
So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.
You start to walk slowly along the riverbank. The sky glows pale orange over the water, where the Indus River curls through a wide, fertile plain. Everything depends on this river: the soil, the crops, the animals, even the shape of people's days. You hear the rhythmic slap of wooden sandals as early risers make their way to the fields, carrying wicker baskets of seed and tools fashioned from copper and stone.
The river's surface is smooth, except where the current catches at clumps of reeds. You notice that the land around it isn't wild or chaotic. It's tamed, carefully divided by low mud walls that hold back water from the last flood. Each enclosure seems almost mathematical in its layout, a silent pattern that has repeated for generations. You run your hand through the moist soil and feel its cool, sticky texture. It's rich with silt, freshly laid down by last season's monsoon floods. You can almost sense how ancient farmers came to understand that these yearly inundations weren't disasters to fear. They were blessings, gifts from the river gods that renewed the earth.
A farmer passes by, his tunic short, his hair bound with a cord. He nods toward you, though you don't exist in his world, and gestures to the river with a kind of reverence. This morning, he and his family will walk to their small plot and begin the day's work. There are no tractors, no wheels spinning across soil, just simple plows drawn by humped zebu cattle, their horns painted with stripes of white clay. The rhythm is slow, patient. You can almost hear the breath of the animals, the creak of the harness, the steady crunch of earth turned over to catch the sunlight. Historians still argue whether these farmers were part of an organized state or more like a loose confederation of villages. The ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro suggest sophistication: planned streets, drainage, standardized brick sizes, but no kings, no war memorials, no self-congratulatory statues. It's as if everyone here agreed to quietly cooperate without the ego of empire. As you move closer to one of the small farming compounds, you spot round granaries raised on short pillars, ingenious little storage silos that keep rats and moisture at bay. Chickens scuttle between potsherds, a dog barks lazily and then immediately regrets the effort. The air smells faintly of smoke and dung, a comforting, domestic kind of smell, the scent of human life finding balance with nature. There's something peaceful about how everything seems to flow with the land rather than fight it. The people here don't carve the earth into rigid rectangles or drain every drop from the river. Instead, they wait, observe, and time their planting with the slow rhythm of the monsoon. It's early urban sustainability, 5,000 years before the term existed. A woman squats by a clay pot, mixing a slurry of ash and water. She smears it over her skin as a kind of natural sunblock. You might chuckle here, remembering the later Indus invention of cosmetics. Crocodile dung was once rumored to be part of their skincare routine, though no one's lining up to recreate that one. The people here seem practical, unhurried. Even in their inventions, there's no trace of excess, only efficiency and quiet cleverness. You sit under a tamarind tree and watch the day unfold. A group of children run past, their feet kicking up dust, chasing something that might be a homemade toy wheel.
One trips, laughs, and keeps going. A farmer hums a tune as he lifts a bucket from the river using a simple wooden lever, a precursor to the shaduf, which will later appear in Egypt and across Asia. The sound of water splashing into a clay trough is rhythmic and soothing. Mainstream historians often credit the Indus Valley for its remarkable urban planning. But here in the countryside, you realize that the foundation of that order began with farming. Every straight street in Mohenjo-Daro, every right-angled brick grew from this deep understanding of geometry and water flow in the fields. Without the quiet logic of agriculture, the great cities could never have risen. The sun climbs higher, and you notice shimmering waves of heat rolling across the plain. You can feel your tunic sticking to your skin, and you take a step into the river shallows just to cool off. The water is cool and gritty, swirling around your ankles. Somewhere upriver, people are gathering fish caught in woven traps. Downstream, others collect clay for bricks. The river connects them all: farmers, potters, traders, threads of one vast tapestry. Some archaeologists believe Indus farmers may have used small perforated pots as primitive sprinklers, little clay vessels filled with water that slowly leaked onto plant roots. It's such a small, elegant idea, the kind that would barely leave a trace in the soil, but shows how advanced their irrigation thinking might have been. You wander past a small shrine built from river stones, decorated with seashells that must have traveled hundreds of kilometers from the Arabian Sea. Offerings of grain and milk sit beside a carved figure, perhaps a fertility goddess, perhaps just someone's grandmother immortalized in clay. There's a sense that everything here, labor, faith, and survival, flows from the same quiet source. By midday, the sounds of the fields become a low, soothing chorus. You can hear the hum of insects, the distant clink of copper tools, the rhythmic sigh of the wind bending tall stalks of barley. The people move with deliberate slowness, conserving energy against the heat. The river, too, slows its song, wide and drowsy under the sun. You take a deep breath. The air is thick, fragrant with mud and growing things. You can almost taste the fertility in it. For a moment, you close your eyes, and it feels timeless, like you could stay here, in this gentle rhythm of life and labor forever. If you listen closely, you can hear a faint voice from the far future, our world, trying to label this as the beginning of civilization. But standing here, you realize civilization doesn't begin with monuments or kings. It begins with mornings like this, with people quietly deciding to plant, to nurture, and to share. The air shifts as the morning ripens into late day, and you begin to sense the deeper heartbeat of this land, the pulse of the Indus itself. The river that looked so gentle at dawn now feels alive, almost unpredictable. You walk along its broad curves, watching how it swells and retreats with the seasons. The people here know its moods better than they know their own. They've learned that the same waters that feed their crops can just as easily swallow their fields whole. Every year, when the monsoon winds sweep up from the Arabian Sea, the skies darken with towering clouds. The farmers look up, squint, and trade cautious smiles. You can almost hear their thoughts. Let it be enough, but not too much. The rains come like a curtain of silver, drenching everything in sight. Within hours, the river bursts its banks, sending brown torrents rushing through canals and hollows. You step carefully over puddles, your feet sinking into soft mud that smells both rich and wild. Frogs sing from every direction. A group of children laugh as they float small clay bowls down temporary streams, an early lesson in hydrology, whether they know it or not. The floodwaters spread wide, carrying silt that will dry into soil dense with minerals. This is the secret of the Indus Valley's power, the annual cycle of destruction and renewal. It's a risky rhythm, but it works. When the floods recede, the ground left behind is dark and fertile, ready to cradle another season's seeds. You crouch and drag your fingers through it, feeling the fine grains cling to your skin like flour. You can see why the farmers wait patiently instead of fighting the river. They've learned that the earth rewards those who move at its pace. Still, it's not always merciful. Historians still argue whether catastrophic floods eventually pushed settlements to relocate, forcing people to rebuild further from the water's reach. Some say these unpredictable surges may have even led to the slow fading of the Indus civilization itself. Others believe the floods weren't disasters at all, but part of a managed system, something the people planned for, anticipated, and even used to their advantage. Either way, you get the feeling that life here has always been a long conversation with the river, sometimes kind, sometimes curt, but always necessary. You notice how farmers channel the receding water into shallow basins, forming a patchwork of moisture-rich plots. There are no towering dams, no massive barriers, just earth shaped and reshaped by hand. The land has memory here. You can still see faint marks of past floods, a ridge where someone once tried to divert a stream, a hollow that has turned into a pond for livestock. A farmer wades by, pulling a long stick to test the water's depth. He wears a loose cotton cloth, knotted at the waist, his skin glistening with a mix of sweat and rain. He gestures toward the fields and smiles, as if to say, "Now the real work begins." The first step is patience. The second is timing, and timing in this place is everything. The rhythm of this world is measured not by clocks, but by rivers. You can hear the constant low hiss of the current as it licks against mud banks, whispering secrets of past monsoons. When you look closer, you realize that even the settlement patterns mirror the flow of water. Villages huddle near tributaries, but never too close, as if to maintain polite distance from a moody neighbor. Archaeological evidence from Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa shows that Indus Valley farmers used floodwater farming, what modern agronomists call inundation irrigation. They planted their crops as the waters receded, letting the rich silt do the fertilizing for them. This system was both simple and brilliant. No need for artificial fertilizers, just nature doing its quiet, muddy work. You pause for a moment, imagining how that might feel. The first seeds pressed into damp ground, the scent of rain still fresh, the promise of green shoots rising soon. It's not glamorous, but it's reliable, steady, and somehow deeply human. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Some archaeologists believe that the Indus people might have intentionally flooded small fields to simulate the effect of river overflow, using wooden sluices to release water from higher channels. In other words, they practiced an ancient form of controlled flooding, millennia before modern irrigation science. It's oddly comforting to think that the same principles that drive today's farmers, too little water, too much water, never just right, have been around since the dawn of time. You step onto a slightly raised causeway, probably built after the last big flood. From here, the land looks like a living map. Brown fields dotted with green sprouts, silver water glinting between them like veins. Beyond that, hazy mountains guard the horizon. The air hums with insects and the distant moan of oxen. You notice that even in the chaos of flood season, there's no panic here. The people trust their rhythm. They've seen it all before. A man repairs a small bund, a low earthen wall, to redirect a trickle of water away from his house. His son helps by stamping it down with bare feet. You hear the boy giggle every time mud squishes between his toes. It's a small, tender moment that makes you smile. Farming here isn't just survival, it's a family ritual, a kind of inherited dance between generations and the land. The sky darkens again briefly, the last sigh of the monsoon passing overhead. The clouds move like great gray ships, their undersides glowing with lightning that never quite touches the ground. You can feel the electricity in the air, that sense of potential energy just waiting to be released. You think of how dependent everyone here is on this balance. Too much rain and the crops drown. Too little, and the soil cracks like pottery. The people must be part mathematician, part poet, calculating rainfall, reading clouds, and trusting intuition handed down through centuries of patient observation. There's an odd serenity in knowing that nothing here is guaranteed. Each season is a gamble, yet they keep playing. Perhaps that's the truest form of faith, believing that the river will return, that the earth will forgive, that the next harvest will come.
You watch a group of farmers light small lamps at the edge of the fields as dusk approaches. Their flames flicker, reflecting on the wet ground like a constellation turned upside down. Maybe it's a ritual offering to the water gods, or maybe just a practical way to keep insects away. Either way, it's beautiful. The kind of beauty that comes from routine, from quiet coexistence. As the night deepens, the floodwaters recede further, leaving behind a mirror of puddles under the faint moonlight. The air cools, heavy with moisture and the smell of vegetation. You close your eyes and imagine this same scene happening year after year, century after century. People waiting, planting, harvesting, rebuilding. A rhythm older than writing, older than memory. You can almost hear the murmur of voices from thousands of years ago, talking about the coming rains, about how the river seemed higher this year, about how next season's barley might grow thicker if they just let the flood linger a little longer. Their words dissolve into the wind, carried away, but never truly lost. You take a slow breath and smile. It's strange how even in a world so distant, the worries feel familiar. Too much water, too little time, too many mosquitoes. That's just the human condition, isn't it? You chuckle softly. Somewhere far downriver, lightning flashes once more, illuminating the dark curve of the Indus as it snakes across the land. You realize this river has seen everything. Civilizations rise and crumble, gods forgotten, languages vanish, and yet it keeps flowing, unbothered, eternal. The flood will come again, as it always does, and when it does, the people will be waiting, ready to begin again. The rains fade, leaving the air washed clean, the scent of damp clay lingering like memory. You walk again along the river's edge, only now the land looks transformed. Slick brown fields, shallow pools catching the sunlight, and long ridges that gleam faintly where the water has begun to drain. The farmers have returned, their feet sinking slightly with every step. The great river has left its gifts behind, and it's time to manage them. You notice how calm everyone seems in this in-between moment? There's no shouting, no rush, just quiet coordination. Some are digging shallow channels, others clearing silt from low stone-lined pits. A group of women are stacking small clay bricks, still wet, into a neat line along the embankment. You watch them for a while and realize what you're looking at isn't random. It's irrigation, planned down to the angle of a slope and the curve of a wall. The Indus Valley people didn't just use the river, they guided it, coaxed it, and learned to balance its temper. This isn't brute engineering, it's collaboration with nature, subtle and practical. You crouch to examine one of the channels. It's about the width of your arm span, smooth at the bottom, shaped to carry water gently downhill. The walls are lined with baked bricks, each one nearly identical. Historians still marvel at this level of standardization. Imagine it, every brick across hundreds of kilometers made to the same ratio, 1 to 2 to 4. Even modern construction workers sometimes miss that mark. A man passes, carrying a long-handled tool that looks like a cross between a hoe and a scoop. He uses it to guide the water, redirecting the stream with small, precise movements. You watch as the trickle splits into two paths, one leading to a row of young barley shoots, the other disappearing into a lower basin where a few goats are drinking. The entire system seems to breathe, like veins under skin. You kneel and touch the flow, feeling the cool glide of water. There's something almost meditative about it, the soft murmur as it moves, the occasional bubble when it hits a tiny stone.
It's easy to forget that this simplicity hides serious understanding. Some archaeologists believe these irrigation methods were so advanced that they required careful measurement of gradients. Without metal rulers or surveying tools, they used rope, weight, and instinct, a delicate art of balance and patience. Excavations at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro show evidence of wells, reservoirs, and drainage systems that likely tied into field irrigation. Each household had its own water source, and some communities even built public bathing areas, suggesting an advanced culture of water management. You think about that, how rare it is, even today, to see water treated not just as a utility, but as a shared trust. You move inland, away from the river, where the land slopes gently upward. There, you spot a rectangular pit with raised walls. At first glance, it looks like a foundation for a house, but then you notice the channels feeding into it from several directions. It's a catchment basin, an early reservoir designed to trap runoff during the monsoon and store it for drier months. The Indus farmers understood that the flood season was only half the story. The real test came when the rain stopped. A young woman is standing nearby, filling a jug from the basin. She lowers it slowly, careful not to disturb the sediment at the bottom. Her bracelets clink softly. Behind her, a man leads two bullocks pulling a simple wooden plow, its bronze-tipped blade slicing through damp soil. The oxen snort and shake their heads, their shoulders glistening with effort. The earth curls up in waves behind them, and you can smell the sweet, mineral scent of freshly turned soil. You can't help but think that the people here are both engineers and artists. Every line, every furrow, every channel feels designed not to dominate the land, but to flow with it. Maybe that's the quiet secret of their success. A quirky tidbit floats into your thoughts. Some researchers have found tiny clay models of wells and tanks among Indus artifacts. Were they toys, teaching tools, or scale prototypes? No one's sure. It's tempting to imagine a teacher explaining to a group of young apprentices how to angle a channel just right, using a miniature replica to demonstrate water flow. You can almost see them nodding solemnly, pretending to understand. You pause near a large brick-lined well. The rope creaks as a man hauls up a bucket, water dripping in thin streams back into the dark shaft. He hands it to a woman who pours it into a long trough that leads toward a field. The well's design is elegant, circular, reinforced, and deep. Some of these wells have lasted thousands of years. In fact, modern villagers in the Indus region still dig them the same way, using the same principles. The past isn't buried here, it's quietly ongoing. Historians still argue whether these systems were centrally planned by a governing authority or built cooperatively by local families. Some point to the uniformity of design as proof of administration. Others insist it's cultural consensus, a kind of shared blueprint passed down through communities. Either way, it's a model of collaboration that would make any modern water board blush. You stroll further, tracing a canal as it winds through the landscape. Every so often, it splits, feeding into smaller trenches that glisten in the sun. Along the edges, you see clay markers, simple stakes driven into the ground to measure water levels. The more you watch, the more the entire system feels alive, pulsing gently with purpose. By midday, the heat is thick enough to make the air shimmer. You sit under a neem tree beside a group of resting farmers. One of them fans himself with a palm leaf. Another takes a lazy sip from a clay pot. They speak softly, their language lost to time, but their laughter sounds universal. Someone gestures toward you and chuckles, probably wondering why you're sitting there staring at mud like it's the eighth wonder of the world. Fair question. You notice a faint breeze carrying the scent of wet grain and cattle. It's oddly relaxing, almost hypnotic. You think of how this same breeze once cooled thousands of others before you. Traders, herders, builders, dreamers, all part of the same slow rhythm of life. When the farmers rise again, they move with unhurried precision. The water flows, the oxen plod, the fields drink deeply. You realize that for them, irrigation isn't just work, it's ritual. Every trench dug, every channel cleared is an act of faith in the river's return. As the day wanes, you follow a smaller canal back toward the settlement. The sky deepens into amber. Dragonflies hover above the water, darting in erratic patterns. The fields glow gold, their reflections trembling on the moving surface. You step over a small bridge made of flat stones and pause in the center to watch the river one more time. The Indus flows wide and patient, carrying bits of straw and leaves, its voice steady but soft. It feels like the river itself is breathing for the people, exhaling during the floods, inhaling as the waters retreat. Everything here depends on that balance. You take one last look around and think about how many civilizations tried to master nature through force, while these people chose harmony instead. Maybe that's why the Indus Valley left no monuments of conquest, no towering palaces, just quiet systems that worked, sustained, and endured. A low chuckle escapes you. The thought crosses your mind that if modern cities had half the humility of these ancient farmers, we might actually survive the next century without panicking about water shortages. You brush some dust from your tunic, feeling oddly grateful for the lesson. The last light fades, and the water glows silver under the moon. Somewhere in the distance, a bull lowly moos, and a child's laughter floats on the wind. You let out a slow breath, your shoulders sinking. The irrigation channels glisten like threads of starlight, weaving together the land, the river, and the people into one timeless, gentle pattern. Morning again. The fog has thinned, and the air carries that faint, damp sweetness that always follows a night of river dew. You step out onto the path that leads away from the water toward the gentle hum of life beginning in the fields. The farmers are already at work, stooped figures against the horizon, their movements steady and rhythmic. You feel the soft crunch of chaff under your feet and realize you've wandered right into the heart of something beautiful, the beginning of a growing season. This is where everything starts, with seeds, patience, and the stubborn hope that the earth will keep its promise. You kneel beside a farmer who is crouched low, his fingers deftly pressing small grains into the damp soil. His face is lined but calm, as if every wrinkle holds a memory of past harvests. He looks at you, grins faintly, and gestures for you to try. You take a handful of barley seeds, they're smooth, light, almost warm, and scatter them in an arc that's far less graceful than his. Still, he nods approvingly, as if to say, "It'll do." You watch the process unfold across the plain. Men and women move like dancers, synchronized without speaking. Some drop seeds, others follow behind, covering them with thin layers of earth. In another corner, a group works with lentils and peas, pushing them into raised mounds that help the roots stay dry when the ground floods. The rhythm is soothing, like the land itself is breathing. Archaeologists have found evidence that Indus Valley farmers grew barley, wheat, peas, sesame, and cotton. Yes, cotton, one of humanity's earliest textiles. They also cultivated dates and melons in warmer regions. It's incredible to think that your bed sheets, your t-shirt, your favorite jeans all trace their lineage back to this quiet field 5,000 years ago. As you walk, the scent of earth changes, wet near the river, drier and dustier farther inland. You crouch near a plot where the soil looks paler, almost sandy. The farmer here is using a long-handled hoe to break it up before planting. He explains, though you can only half understand the words, that different soils suit different crops. Barley likes the heavier clay near the river, while sesame and mustard prefer lighter, well-drained patches. You nod wisely, pretending you already knew that. A gentle breeze lifts and rustles through the young shoots. The air feels alive with small sounds. The creak of wood, the soft murmur of voices, the distant plop of a frog. You spot a woman balancing a woven basket on her head. Inside are seeds wrapped in wet cloth, an ancient trick to encourage germination. She places them carefully near the edge of a newly cleared plot, humming a tune that might be older than language itself. You pause to take it all in. Farming here isn't just survival, it's a system of quiet observation and experimentation. Every season, the farmers learn from the river, from the soil, from one another. Some historians believe this cumulative knowledge might explain how the Indus people achieved such remarkable stability. While other ancient civilizations expanded through conquest or trade, this one grew through consistency. Year after year, they planted, adjusted, and adapted until the system itself became stronger than any single generation. Historians still argue whether their agricultural success depended more on luck or intelligence. Was it the good fortune of geography or a result of deliberate scientific thinking? The debate never really ends, which is fitting, because the truth probably lies somewhere in between. The wisdom of people humble enough to listen to their land. You notice the subtle organization of the fields. They're not random. Narrow paths divide them into neat rectangles, allowing easy movement of people and animals. Each plot seems to belong to a family or small cooperative, marked perhaps by a distinctive arrangement of stones or posts. There are no fences, no shouting overseers, just quiet understanding of where one boundary ends and another begins. It makes you wonder about ownership. Maybe land here wasn't owned in the way we think of it now. Maybe it was something you tended for a while, respected, and left better than you found it. The thought is oddly comforting. A quirky detail catches your eye. Small terracotta discs scattered along the field edges, each with holes in the center. At first, they look like broken pottery, but a farmer picks one up and shows you it's a plow weight. These little discs were tied to wooden beams to steady the plow and help it cut deeper into the soil. Simple, clever, and effective. You can't help but smile. Somewhere, an ancient engineer is probably still feeling smug about that invention. As the sun climbs, you wander toward a shaded grove where a few cattle graze lazily. Their humps sway as they move, tails flicking away flies with slow irritation. These are zebu, domesticated thousands of years ago right here in South Asia. Their milk, their strength, their patience all make them vital partners in farming life. One of them lets out a deep, resigned moo that sounds a lot like, "You again?" You grin and give it a respectful nod. Nearby, a woman sprinkles ashes mixed with water around the base of young plants, a natural pesticide long before that word existed. The smell of smoke and clay mingles in the air. It's such an elegant solution. Protect the crops without poisoning the soil. You find yourself wondering how many of these old methods still survive in remote villages today, passed down not through books, but through hands and memory. By midday, the heat thickens, and the fields shimmer like liquid bronze. The farmers retreat under trees to eat. You join them, sitting cross-legged in the shade. They unwrap bundles of bread made from barley flour and offer you a piece. It's coarse, dense, slightly nutty. Someone pours a little sour milk into a clay cup and passes it around. You sip carefully. It's tangy, unfamiliar, and strangely satisfying. You're not sure if it's lunch or a ritual, but either way, it feels sacred. The conversation drifts around you. Laughter bursts now and then. Someone makes a joke about a goat that wandered into the next village and came back with painted horns. You laugh too, not at the joke exactly, but at the warmth of the moment. The sense that even here, in a fragile balance of soil and sky, people find time to be human. After eating, a few men head back to the fields carrying baskets of seeds soaked in cow dung, a surprisingly effective fertilizer that adds nutrients and repels pests. The smell is, let's say, memorable. You make a mental note not to stand downwind. Still, you can't deny the brilliance of it. Nature recycling itself, over and over. You watch as the afternoon light turns soft, the shadows stretching long across the fields.
The farmers move slower now, but the rhythm never stops. Plant, water, rest, repeat. You find yourself swaying to the pace, lulled by the rustle of barley stalks and the steady squeak of a wooden wheel turning at a nearby well. Somewhere behind you, a bird calls, a long, rising note that fades into silence. You glance up and see a flock of cranes circling lazily overhead. It's a good sign, one farmer tells you. Birds mean life, and life means the river has done its part. You nod, though he probably doesn't need your confirmation. He's known that truth his whole life. As the sun dips, you walk the length of the field one more time. The seeds are invisible beneath the surface, but somehow you already feel them there, waiting. You imagine the next few weeks, rain, growth, the first tender shoots breaking through. Everything depends on these tiny lives hidden in the dirt. You pause at the edge of the field, letting the wind brush against your face. It smells of wet soil, sweat, and the faint sweetness of future grain. The light turns golden, then amber, then fades into a dusky purple. Somewhere nearby, someone starts to sing, a slow, steady melody that matches the heartbeat of the land. You take one last look at the neat rows stretching toward the horizon, a pattern older than any story. Farming, you think, isn't just work, it's memory, carried from hand to hand, from one season to the next, until even time itself begins to sound like the rustle of crops in a field. The next morning greets you with the low, steady rumble of hooves. Dust rises in soft clouds as the first light slips over the horizon. You follow the sound and soon find yourself standing near a cluster of cattle pens, where a group of men and women are busy at work. Some are tying ropes, others are rubbing oil on the hides of their animals, and a few children are sitting nearby, giggling as they braid flowers into a calf's tail. You smile. It's a sight equal parts practical and tender. The Indus Valley people love their animals, not as pets exactly, but as indispensable companions in their work. The humped zebu cattle snort and shuffle, their large eyes patient and oddly wise. Beyond them, buffalo stand half-submerged in muddy pools, flicking their ears lazily. You can almost hear them sigh, the universal sound of creatures resigned to both work and heat. These animals are the engines of Indus agriculture. They pull plows, drag carts, and tread grain. Without them, the great cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro might never have existed. You watch as a farmer approaches a pair of oxen with a wooden yoke, polished smooth by use. He fits it gently across their necks, murmuring something low and rhythmic, words you can't understand, but that clearly soothe them. When they begin to move, it's with calm precision, their muscles rolling under skin like slow waves. Mainstream fact farmers domesticated several animals, including cattle, water buffalo, sheep, goats, and even camels. Their herds weren't just for food. They provided milk, leather, traction, and status. Archaeologists have found small terracotta figurines of bulls and carts, suggesting that draft animals played a central role in both farming and transport. You walk beside the farmer as he guides his team through the field. The plow is simple, a wooden shaft with a bronze-tipped blade, but it does the job beautifully, cutting deep furrows in the soft earth. The smell of freshly turned soil fills the air. Behind him, another farmer follows with a basket of seeds, dropping them carefully into the furrows before they're covered again. The system is efficient, graceful even. Each step flows into the next, like choreography learned from the land itself. There's a quiet rhythm to it all. The creak of wood, the low bellow of oxen, the slap of bare feet on damp ground. You find yourself unconsciously swaying to it, as if the sound alone could till the mind into calmness. Maybe this is what peace looked like 5,000 years ago. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of steady work, done well and without haste. You pause to scratch behind the ear of a particularly placid bull. Its skin is warm and leathery, and when it exhales, the air smells faintly of grass and sun.
You can see why these animals were sacred to later cultures across India, the embodiment of patience, strength, and endurance. It's hard not to feel a little reverence yourself.
In some Indus Valley sites, archaeologists found clay seals depicting what looks like a unicorn bull, single-horned, stylized, and majestic. Some scholars think it was a symbol of fertility or power. Others believe it represented a mythical ideal of the perfect animal. Historians still argue whether that creature ever existed in their imagination or if it was just artistic shorthand for the zebu, captured in one elegant line. Either way, it says something about how deeply these people respected the creatures they worked beside. You continue walking, following a cart piled high with woven baskets. A pair of buffalo pull it along, their hooves sinking softly into the mud. The cart creaks with every turn of its solid wooden wheels. You notice the driver leaning back, his posture relaxed, letting the animals find their own pace. There's trust there, a partnership born from countless mornings like this one. As the day warms, the animals are led to a shaded area near a pond. A group of children splash water onto their backs, laughter ringing through the air. Some women fill large clay pots with milk, their bangles clinking like small bells. The milk is poured into shallow pans and set over low fires to thicken into yogurt. The smell drifts toward you, rich, slightly sour, comforting. One woman notices you watching and grins, holding up a bowl as if to offer you a taste. You nod politely, though you suspect your modern stomach might not handle it as gracefully as hers. Still, the gesture feels warm, familiar. Hospitality seems timeless. You sit by the pond's edge and watch dragonflies hover over the water. Reflections shimmer, and you realize that every living thing here, human, animal, plant, depends on this shared rhythm. The buffalo churn the fields, the cattle haul grain, the people milk and feed and clean, and in return, the animals provide the muscle that makes civilization possible. It's a cycle so perfect that you almost forget how fragile it really is. You spot a man using a smaller animal, a donkey this time, to carry salt blocks and clay pots toward the settlement. The donkey's ears flick constantly, as if it's trying to tune out its owner's cheerful singing. You can't help but laugh softly. Even here, some things never change. People sing while working, animals roll their eyes at them, and the world keeps turning. Historians still argue whether the domestication of these animals began independently in the Indus region or came from contact with older Mesopotamian cultures. Some evidence points to parallel evolution, two river civilizations discovering the same truths at roughly the same time. Others suggest trade or migration carried the idea across deserts and mountains. It's one of those historical questions that might never be answered, and maybe that's fine. Not everything needs solving. Some mysteries, like the river itself, are best left to flow. By midday, the heat becomes heavy and golden. The farmers gather their herds into shaded pens made of woven reeds. You notice how the animals cluster together, their bodies moving like a single organism. Flies buzz lazily, and the distant hum of human voices blurs into a kind of lullaby. It's the kind of sound that makes you want to close your eyes and just be. A farmer sits beside you and begins to carve something from a block of wood. A miniature bowl, perhaps, for a child or a small household altar. His knife moves slowly, precisely, and when he finishes, he rubs the figure with oil until it gleams. He hands it to you for a moment, and you feel its smoothness, the weight of it in your palm. It's simple, imperfect, and utterly alive. He tucks it into his bag and stands, dusting off his hands. "Work time," he says, or something close to it, and heads back to the fields. You stay seated, watching the light shift through the dust, the faint shimmer of heat waves rising from the ground. You realize that farming here isn't just about tools and soil. It's about relationships. Between humans and animals, between families and fields, between effort and rest. Everything is connected through patience. Maybe that's why the Indus civilization lasted so long without war monuments or kings. They didn't need symbols of power. They had rhythm instead.
You take one last look at the pens as the evening deepens. The animals settle down, tails swishing, their breathing slow and steady. A few children feed them handfuls of hay before scampering home. The air cools, carrying with it the faint scent of dung fires and cooked grain. Somewhere nearby, someone hums a lullaby for the cattle, a soft tune that drifts through the twilight. The sky above turns violet, and the river glows like molten glass. You feel the day's weight easing off your shoulders. There's something humbling about this world, a quiet pact between strength and gentleness, between beast and human.
You smile to yourself. Civilization, you think, didn't start with stone temples or bronze weapons. It began right here, with a man, a plow, and a patient bull who didn't mind getting muddy. The morning air is crisp again, but this time you're not following cattle or tracing irrigation lines. You're crouched beside a low mud wall, watching a man sharpen the edge of a bronze blade with careful, circular motions. The soft rasp of metal on stone fills the quiet space between you. It's oddly meditative, like someone whittling time itself down to an edge. He looks up, nods once, and gestures for you to come closer. You obey, settling beside him as he lifts the blade to the light. It gleams faintly, sunlight bouncing off its curved surface. The thing is small, about the length of your forearm, with a handle bound in leather. You realize it's not a weapon, it's a sickle, one of the countless tools that keep this civilization fed and thriving. In the Indus Valley, tools are everything. They may not look like much, no ornate carvings or fancy decorations, but each one carries a story of skill, necessity, and invention. You watch as the man stands, stretches, and walks toward a nearby shed made of reed and mud. Inside, you see a small workshop, stacks of stone weights, clay molds, bronze scraps, and plow parts. It smells faintly of earth, ash, and metal. He picks up another object, a plowshare, heavy and dull-edged, and sets it on the ground beside a wooden shaft. The pieces fit together with an ease that makes you think of Lego, but with more blisters involved. You help him tighten a rope that binds the blade to the plow. The rope creaks, the wood groans, and suddenly the thing looks alive. Mainstream fact. Archaeologists have found terracotta plow models and copper or bronze sickles at multiple Indus sites, suggesting advanced agricultural tools were in everyday use. Some even show signs of resharpening, proving that these farmers didn't just use tools, they maintained them like professionals. You trail after him as he carries the plow to a nearby field. The soil is dry at the surface, but darker and moist beneath, a perfect texture for sowing seeds. With one hand steady on the plow and the other holding the reins of his oxen, he begins to work. The plow cuts through the soil, the blade biting deep, turning earth in long, even furrows. Each pass leaves behind neat ridges that catch the morning light like corduroy. You notice something clever. The plow doesn't dig too deep. It's designed to open just the top layer, conserving the rich humus below while aerating the surface for planting. Efficient, sustainable, and clearly the product of generations of observation. A boy nearby works with another tool, a small hoe with a flat metal edge, perfect for breaking clods and shaping irrigation channels. His movements are fluid, rhythmic. You can tell he's been doing this since before he could spell his own name, if spelling were even a thing here, which, well, historians still argue about. Some say the Indus script was more symbolic than phonetic. Others believe it recorded full languages we just haven't cracked yet. Either way, that mystery doesn't bother him. His language is muscle memory. You crouch to watch him closer. He pauses to smile at you, then points at a basket of tools beside him. You pick one up, a flat, triangular trowel made of fired clay. Lightweight, but surprisingly sturdy. perfect for scooping grain, spreading plaster, or even smoothing pottery. You give it an experimental scrape through the dirt. It works like a charm. A quirky tidbit bubbles up. Some researchers think that the Indus people may have used stone weights, measured in standardized ratios, to regulate trade in metal tools and other goods. Imagine that! Ancient quality control, long before online reviews. You can almost picture a farmer complaining, "This plow blade's a gram short. I want a refund in barley."
You follow the sound of gentle hammering and find another worker, this one crouched by a small fire pit. He's holding a lump of copper with a pair of tongs, turning it carefully over the flames. Sparks pop and hiss. The air smells metallic, sharp. You take a step back, but he grins, clearly enjoying your caution. The heat glows in his eyes as he sets the copper on a flat stone and begins to shape it with rhythmic taps. The process looks simple, but it's a quiet marvel. This is metallurgy before electricity, before blast furnaces, before even the concept of science. Just human intuition and patience. You watch as the copper slowly becomes a blade, the edge hammered thinner and sharper with each strike. Mainstream historians still argue whether these metal tools were made locally in each settlement or produced in centralized workshops and traded across the region. Some evidence from Harappa suggests organized craft districts with bronze, shell, and bead workers all clustered in one area. If true, that means this toolmaker isn't just a farmer's helper, he's part of a specialized economy, one of the earliest examples of labor division. When the tool cools, he dunks it into a pot of water. Steam hisses upward, wrapping you in a sudden cloud of heat. He tests the edge, nods in approval, then hands it to you. It's surprisingly light. You turn it in your hands, noticing the faint hammer marks, a signature of sorts. Every strike, every flaw tells a story. "Good," he says softly. At least, that's what it sounds like. He smiles, takes it back, and returns to work. You leave him to it, realizing how much thought goes into each piece of metal. No mass production, no factory stamps, just deliberate, patient craft. You wander again, following the smell of damp wood. A woman is shaping clay into small discs on a mat. You assume they're coins at first, but then notice the holes through the center. She's making spindle whorls, used for spinning thread. Not exactly a farming tool, but part of the same ecosystem. After all, the more efficient the farmers, the more surplus time others have to craft and trade. Civilization runs on that simple equation. Nearby, another family is busy mending a wooden cart. The father sands a wheel rim while his son applies oil to the axle. You recognize the cart's design. It's nearly identical to one carved on ancient Indus seals. 2 wheels, flat bed, single yoke. Tried, tested, and probably never improved upon until rubber tires came along. A rooster crows, breaking your train of thought. The sound is both ancient and modern, the same obnoxious confidence in every era. You grin and shake your head. Even 5,000 years ago, someone probably muttered, "Too early for that, buddy." As the day stretches on, you see the tools in action everywhere. Sickles flashing in the sun, baskets thudding with grain, hoes clinking against stones. You realize this civilization was built not by kings or conquerors, but by calluses, by the everyday repetition of small, perfect motions. Historians still debate how much technology the Indus Valley shared with neighboring regions. Did they inspire others, or were they inspired in turn? Were their plows modeled after Sumerian ones, or was it parallel invention again? The truth likely lies somewhere in between, a quiet exchange of ideas carried by traders, travelers, and maybe the occasional wandering ox. As the sun dips low, tools are gathered, cleaned, and stored with care. No one tosses them aside. Each sickle is wiped, each blade oiled. There's reverence in these gestures, a recognition that survival depends on sharpness and order.
You sit nearby, watching the last rays of sunlight catch the edges of the bronze tools. They glow briefly, like captured fireflies. Around you, the sounds of the day fade into the background hum of crickets and distant chatter. You find yourself thinking of your own world, of machines that break, plastic tools tossed aside. And here, in this ancient calm, you feel a small tug of envy for the simplicity of maintenance, of ownership, of knowing exactly who made what and why. As the night breeze picks up, you lean back, letting the stars shimmer above. The tools rest where they've always belonged, not as trophies of progress, but as quiet extensions of human hands. Each one is a promise that with the right care, the land will yield again tomorrow. You close your eyes, and the last sound you hear before sleep finds you is the faint scrape of stone against bronze, a lullaby of labor, precision, and peace. The sun rises softly over the village, painting the mud brick walls in a gentle amber hue. You wake to the distant rhythm of pestles pounding grain, a sound so steady it feels like the heartbeat of the settlement itself. The air carries the mixed scent of smoke, clay, and freshly churned milk. You stretch, feeling the world around you come to life, not with haste, but with calm purpose. A woman passes by balancing a pot on her head, her steps perfectly even. She doesn't spill a drop. Behind her, a boy drives a few lazy goats toward a patch of grazing land, whistling tunelessly. You fall into step behind them, wandering through narrow lanes where homes cluster close, their walls plastered with pale mud that glows in the light. This is the village heart of the Indus Valley, far from the grand ruins of Mohenjo-Daro or Harappa, but no less vital. The cities may be the bones of the civilization, but the villages are its pulse. You hear children laughing somewhere nearby, the clatter of clay pots, the splash of water as someone washes grain. Everything hums along in quiet coordination, each person performing their role like a note in a low, soothing melody. A woman beckons you to sit beside her near a grinding stone. She's using a large circular slab with a smaller stone roller to crush barley into fine flour. Her arms move with steady grace, muscles sculpted by years of the same motion. You watch, mesmerized, as the grain transforms beneath her hands. Tiny, golden kernels turning into soft powder. She catches you staring and smirks. Good for strong arms, she might be saying, judging by her flex and mock-serious face. You laugh softly. Humor, it seems, doesn't need translation. In the Indus Valley, daily life in farming villages revolved around communal labor. Women often managed grinding, food preparation, and textile work, while men focused on fieldwork, herding, and maintenance of irrigation systems. Archaeological evidence, like wear marks on querns and grinding stones, suggests these tools were central household items, used constantly. A faint breeze stirs, carrying the smell of baking bread from a nearby clay oven. You wander closer. A young girl pulls small, round loaves from the oven with a flat stick, each one puffed and steaming. She lays them carefully on a woven mat to cool. You inhale deeply. It smells nutty and slightly sweet. For a moment, you forget what century you're in. A few steps away, another group sits in a circle weaving baskets from river reeds. Their fingers move quickly, looping and tightening, forming strong containers for grain and produce. The pattern repeats in hypnotic silence, save for the rustle of dry reeds. A small boy watches them intently before trying to mimic their movements with a bundle twice his size. The older weavers chuckle, helping him find the rhythm. You can't help but smile. It's all so human. As you move through the settlement, you notice something subtle but brilliant. Every home seems designed for airflow. Open courtyards, small vents, shaded alcoves. The architecture feels intuitive, perfectly matched to the heat and the seasons. You realize these people lived not against nature, but alongside it. Historians still argue whether these homes were designed by individual families or according to a central plan.
Some think there was an unspoken standard, a kind of shared blueprint passed down by habit and cooperation. Others suspect a more organized civic structure, guiding even rural architecture. Either way, the results speak for themselves. Centuries of comfort carved from clay.
You pause near a communal well where a line of women chat quietly as they draw water. The sound of buckets splashing and ropes creaking fills the air. One woman ties her pot with a loop of cloth, resting it against her hip with practiced ease. Another sprinkles a few drops onto the ground before leaving. A tiny ritual, a thank you to the water itself.
A quirky tidbit floats to mind. Some excavations show small terracotta figurines of women adorned with elaborate headdresses and bangles, possibly fertility or household goddesses. It's thought that rural families might have kept these figures in niches or near their hearths for blessings, half decoration, half devotion. You can almost picture one tucked in a corner here, silently watching over breakfast.
You continue down the lane toward the edge of the village where the fields begin. Farmers are already at work, moving in slow harmony with their animals. One man whistles softly as he guides his oxen. Another squats nearby repairing a harness. The day unfolds predictably, comfortingly. It's not a life of surprises, but one of rhythms. Sunrise, work, meal, rest. Again and again.
You sit beneath a tree with a few older men who finish their morning tasks. One is carving a wooden handle for a tool. Another plucks at a simple string instrument, its tune low and wandering. They nod politely to you, acknowledging your quiet presence. You feel yourself relax, the kind of peace that comes only when no one expects you to talk. Mainstream fact: archaeological findings from smaller Indus sites like Lothal, Kalibangan, and Shanhudaro show that villages had well-defined community spaces and standardized layouts, often mirroring city planning principles on a smaller scale. This suggests strong social organization even at the local level. As midday heat builds, the village slows. The soundscape shifts. Fewer voices, more buzzing insects. Most people retreat indoors, resting in the shade. You find a spot under a broad acacia tree. Its branches creak gently in the breeze. Somewhere close, you hear the rhythmic turning of a potter's wheel, soft, hypnotic, like a lullaby for the hands. You wander over to watch. The potter, a wiry man with clay-caked fingers, shapes a lump of wet earth into something perfect with nothing but touch and intuition. The wheel hums steadily, and in seconds, the formless clay becomes a bowl, then a jar, then a cup. He looks at you and grins, eyes twinkling, and says something that probably means, "Want to try?" You shake your head quickly. No need to embarrass yourself in 2500 BCE. As he sets his new creation aside to dry, he sprinkles a handful of dust on the wheel to keep it smooth. Like everything, you think, even perfection needs maintenance. Historians still debate whether the potter's wheel was an imported technology or a local innovation that spread outward. What's clear is that it revolutionized daily life, not through conquest or invention myths, but through convenience. Faster pottery meant more storage, better trade, and fewer rats chewing through grain. Sometimes civilization advances because someone was simply tired of leaks. By late afternoon, the village awakens again. Women bring water to the fields. Children chase each other between storage jars, and a group of elders gathers around the central hearth to discuss tomorrow's work. The tone is calm, unhurried. You notice that no one raises their voice. Even disagreements seem more like ripples than waves. A boy passes carrying a bundle of reeds and a handful of clay figures, tiny cows, goats, and a few you can't quite identify. He's arranging them on the ground, building a miniature farm for himself. You watch him play, carefully moving one figurine at a time. Then, without warning, he looks up at you with solemn seriousness and declares something in his language. Maybe it's a rule of his tiny farm game. Maybe it's just a child's decree. You can't step here.
Either way, you obey.
Evening settles softly over the fields. The sky bleeds from orange to violet, and smoke curls upward from cooking fires. The scent of lentils, onion, and grain mingles with the cool river breeze. Around you, laughter, quiet chatter, and the occasional bark of a dog weave into a comforting chorus. The same woman from the morning grinding session catches your eye again. She gestures toward a flat basket filled with roasted grain and offers you a handful. You chew slowly. It's crunchy, nutty, faintly sweet. She nods approvingly. Good for strength, her tone says again. You grin. As darkness deepens, lamps flicker to life, small clay bowls filled with oil and floating wicks. Their glow softens every edge, turning the village into a constellation of golden dots. You realize how deeply this life is connected to cycles. The plow, the seasons, the sunrise, the daily tasks. It's not monotony, it's harmony. A song sung so long that it becomes the background hum of existence. You lie back on the cool earth and listen. The steady hum of insects, the low murmurs of distant voices, the creak of a door closing somewhere. Tomorrow, they'll rise and do it all again. And maybe that's the secret of endurance. Not grand invention, but quiet repetition. You let your eyes drift shut, lulled by the rhythm of this ancient village, where time itself seems content to move at the pace of a grinding stone. The morning begins with a rustle, not of reeds or wind this time, but of grain. The soft, dry whisper of thousands of kernels shifting in woven baskets. You wake to see farmers already gathering in the fields, their silhouettes moving through the gold-tinted mist like figures in an old dream. Today is harvest day. There's an energy in the air, a quiet excitement that feels almost festive. You follow the procession of men and women carrying sickles, baskets, and ropes. A few oxen plod behind them, tails flicking lazily. The crops are ready, barley heads bowed heavy with grain, wheat stalks standing tall and crisp, pulses tangled in low clusters along the edges. Every breath smells faintly of sun-warmed straw and dust. You step into the field and immediately feel the crunch beneath your feet, the sound of dry earth that's been waiting for this moment. The farmers take their places, forming neat rows. Then, as if responding to some silent signal, they begin to cut. The sound is almost musical. Shh, shh, shh. The steady rhythm of sickles slicing through stalks. Mainstream fact: the Indus Valley farmers relied heavily on seasonal cycles to time their harvests, particularly the post-monsoon months when the soil dried enough for reaping. Archaeological residue analysis confirms the cultivation of barley, wheat, peas, sesame, and mustard, crops well suited to their floodplain climate. You watch an elderly woman gather the cut stalks into tight bundles, her hands moving with fluid precision. She ties each sheaf with a twist of straw and sets it upright in the sun. A younger man nearby swings his sickle with practiced grace, barely pausing to wipe the sweat from his brow. The air fills with the dry, papery rustle of plants being severed from the earth. It's mesmerizing work, simple, repetitive, oddly satisfying to witness, the kind of rhythm that could lull even the most restless mind into calm. You crouch beside a girl no older than 10, who's carefully picking up fallen grains from the ground. She grins when she notices your curiosity, holding up a handful as if showing treasure. Nothing wasted, her gesture seems to say. You nod in quiet agreement. A quirky tidbit crosses your mind. Some Indus sites reveal strange circular depressions in the ground, believed to be threshing floors. Here, farmers likely spread out their harvest and used cattle to tread over it, separating the grain from the stalks. You imagine that scene now. Oxen walking in lazy circles, bells jingling softly, the air full of floating chaff that catches the sunlight like golden snow. And just as you imagine it, it happens. A group begins leading a pair of buffalo to a flat, cleared patch nearby. They spread the stalks, then set the animals walking.
The grain separates easily, light and fine. One man tosses handfuls into the air, letting the wind carry away the husks. It's both work and performance, a slow, deliberate ballet of survival. Historians still argue whether these threshing practices were communal or family-based. Some believe that the Indus people worked collectively during major harvests, dividing the yield afterward. Others think families managed their own plots independently. The truth might be both, shared labor balanced by private reward. Either way, what's clear is the sense of mutual reliance that hums through the air. As the morning wears on, the sun grows brighter. The farmers pause to drink from clay jars, wiping sweat from their faces with the edges of their tunics. You sit in the shade of a low tree, watching dust motes dance in the light. A few children chase each other around the drying bundles, their laughter rising above the rustle of straw. It's hard not to feel the warmth of community here, how even the smallest hands have a place in this great seasonal choreography. By midday, the work shifts. The cut grain is loaded into baskets and carried toward the village. You walk with them, balancing a small bundle yourself, trying to match their steady pace. Every step kicks up little puffs of golden dust. The closer you get to the settlement, the stronger the smell of earth and smoke becomes, a signal that home and food aren't far. Inside the village, the open courtyards have been transformed into temporary storage yards. Women sit beside wide mats, sorting the grain. Some sift it through woven sieves. Others blow lightly across the top to remove fine dust. The grains clink softly as they fall into clay jars, small musical sounds that seem almost intentional, like the percussion of daily life. Mainstream fact: archaeological excavations at Harappa and Lothal show sophisticated storage systems. Granaries built with raised platforms, ventilation channels, and moisture-resistant floors. These designs protected harvests from flood damage and pests, ensuring food security for large populations. You walk over to one such structure. It's a low, rectangular building with thick brick walls and a narrow ramp leading up to a wooden door. Inside, the air is cool and dry, carrying the faint scent of grain and thyme. Workers are stacking sacks of barley along the walls, layering straw between them to absorb humidity. It's all done methodically, as though the building itself demands respect. A small boy runs past, holding a clay jar full of seeds. You follow him to a smaller room at the back, where an older woman is labeling the jars, or rather, marking them with simple symbols. She dips her finger in ash and draws a tiny sign, a line, a dot, a curve. You realize it's a system, perhaps an early form of record keeping. You feel a small thrill at the thought that this might be the root of something far larger than it seems. You glance around and spot something else. Clay pots sealed with mud caps. Curious, you touch one. It's cool and heavy. The woman smiles knowingly, tapping the lid and saying something that probably means for later. These are the long-term stores, kept safe against drought, poor harvests, or even the occasional rodent invasion. A quirky detail: archaeologists have found traces of bitumen, natural tar, lining the inside of certain Indus storage jars, likely used as a sealant. Waterproofed pottery, thousands of years before plastic wrap. You grin. Innovation really does come from necessity, and maybe a little paranoia about mice. As afternoon light softens, you wander to the riverbank, where another team is washing tools. Sickles, baskets, ropes, all cleaned carefully and laid out to dry. There's a sense of closure to it. The harvest is done. The land can rest now. You sit on a flat rock, watching the river flow past, and realize how much trust these people place in the rhythm of nature. The flood brings fertility, the sun brings growth, and human hands make the most of both. Yet everything remains precarious. One bad monsoon, one untimely drought, and all of this could crumble. And still, they work with quiet faith, as though the river itself promised to return.
Historians still argue whether the large granaries found in Harappa were controlled by central authorities or managed collectively. Some say they hint at early government organization, an administrative hand guiding the economy. Others believe they simply represent large-scale cooperation without hierarchy. The Indus Valley, as always, keeps its secrets well. As dusk falls, the village shifts into celebration mode. Fires are lit, drums begin to beat softly, and laughter rolls through the air. A man passes around bowls of roasted grains mixed with honey, while women pour something like fermented barley water into cups. The taste is faintly sweet and smoky. You sip slowly, feeling the warmth spread. Someone starts to sing, a slow, winding melody that carries easily in the open air. The song has no urgency, no refrain, just a gentle rise and fall that seems to echo the rhythm of the river and the harvest. You don't understand the words, but you understand the feeling. You lean back, watching sparks drift upward into the night sky. The fields beyond shimmer faintly under the moon, stubble glowing silver. Somewhere, a buffalo bell jingles softly as the herd settles for sleep. Tomorrow, they'll store the last of the grain. In a few weeks, they'll begin to prepare for the next sowing. Life circles endlessly here, like the seasons themselves. Repetitive, yes, but deeply reassuring. You breathe in the cool air, heavy with the scent of earth and ash and grain. Civilization, you think, isn't built from stone or bronze. It's built from days like this, from tired hands, patient hearts, and the quiet confidence that the river will rise again.
Morning again, though this one feels softer, like the land itself is exhaling after all that labor. You wake to a low hum across the village, not the clatter of tools or the scrape of sickles, but the calm rhythm of hands at work indoors. The harvest is over, yet the work is far from done. Today, you're about to witness what happens after the grain is gathered, the quiet, methodical art of storing and processing it for survival. You stretch and wander toward the granaries, following the faint scent of barley dust in the air. The sun hasn't climbed far yet, and the light comes in pale ribbons through thin morning haze. People are already at it, sorting, grinding, measuring. You can hear the low murmur of voices mixing with the steady scrape of stone against stone. A woman waves you over to a courtyard where two enormous querns sit side by side, flat grinding stones with heavy circular handstones on top. She gestures for you to try. You kneel, take the handle, and begin turning it slowly. The stone drags with deep resistance at first, then loosens into a rhythm. Beneath it, grain breaks and softens, turning to fine golden flour. Mainstream fact: excavations at Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa have revealed thousands of stone querns and grinders, showing that milling was a daily household activity. It wasn't industrialized. Every home ground its own grain, ensuring freshness and, perhaps, a stronger arm workout than any gym could provide. As you grind, the rhythmic motion begins to lull you. Around you, others work in pairs. One pours grain into the quern, the other turns the upper stone. Children sit nearby, playing with empty baskets or drawing in the dust. A few dogs sleep in the shade, their tails twitching dreamily. There's no rush, no noise, just quiet purpose. And here's a quirky tidbit. Tiny bits of charred wheat and barley found in hearths suggest that these people weren't just making flour for bread, but also experimenting with early porridge or beer. That's right, you might be kneeling at the birthplace of comfort food and the original weekend brew. Imagine an Indus tavern night. Clay cups, lukewarm barley ale, and absolutely no one arguing about taxes because there was no written law code yet. You smile at the thought and glance at the small clay jars lining the wall. Each is marked with faint symbols. Some look like fish, others like plants, some just geometric shapes. You run a finger over one and feel the shallow etching.
Historians still argue whether these symbols were used as proto-scripts for labeling goods or whether they had ritual meaning, you recall. Either way, they represent a mind reaching for permanence, a way to keep track of abundance. Someone nearby empties a jar into a wide clay tray. The grains slide out in a soft hiss, catching the sunlight as they spill. Then comes the sorting. You crouch and watch as an elderly man picks out stones and husks with astonishing precision. His fingers move faster than your eyes can follow. Occasionally, he stops to blow the finer chaff away, creating a gentle cloud that glows briefly golden before drifting off on the breeze. The hum of work continues through the morning. You notice that not all grains look the same. Some are dark, others pale or slightly greenish. The people of the Indus Valley, it turns out, cultivated variety as a strategy. Mainstream fact: archaeological evidence shows they grew both winter and summer crops, barley, wheat, and lentils after the floods, and millet and cotton in drier months. Diversity was their insurance policy against unpredictable weather. You take a break and follow a young man to the edge of the settlement where another kind of processing is underway. He's spreading a layer of seeds, mustard maybe, onto a flat stone slab, then pounding them with a smooth pestle. The smell is sharp, almost spicy. Oil begins to pool at the edges, glistening amber in the sunlight. He collects it carefully in a small cup made from a gourd. You touch your fingers to it. It feels thick, slightly gritty. This oil will go into lamps, food, and maybe even a little skincare. Yes, skincare. Charred seeds and sesame oil mixtures found in pottery suggest these people were early adopters of moisturizer. You grin. Skin routines, 2500 BCE edition. Simple ingredients, zero marketing. By midday, the granaries are humming. A team of men carries full jars to a large raised platform near the river. The structure is made of baked brick, perfectly aligned and ventilated. It's a marvel of engineering. You run your hand along the wall and feel the smoothness of kiln-fired clay, still cool even under the heat. A worker explains through gestures that the air vents prevent mold and that grain is stacked by type, barley on one side, pulses on the other. You imagine someone, an overseer perhaps, keeping careful count, maybe using a clay tablet or carved token. Historians still argue whether this system implies centralized control, perhaps a governing body managing resources. Others say it was just collective wisdom passed down through cooperation. Either way, the design works. Thousands of years later, the structure still whispers efficiency. You wander next to a row of smaller storerooms where women are preparing something that smells sweet? You peer inside and see them heating flour mixed with honey over clay stoves, shaping small discs with their hands. You're watching ancient energy bars being born. A woman offers you one. It's warm, chewy, and subtly smoky. Not bad for 4,000 years ago. Nearby, another group is baking flatbreads on hot stones. The smell alone could make anyone nostalgic for a past they never lived. The bread puffs slightly, crisping around the edges. Someone flips it with a stick, catching it before it burns. The first bite is earthy, nutty, faintly sour. You realize it tastes exactly like comfort. You lean back, watching the smoke rise into the air. In the background, the grinding stones keep turning. The rhythm feels timeless. You could fall asleep to that sound alone. The whisper of grain, the sigh of breath, the scrape of survival. As the afternoon light softens, the granary doors close. Clay seals are pressed into fresh mud around the handles, tiny markings to ensure no one sneaks a handful overnight. You examine one, a seal carved with an animal figure, maybe a bull or unicorn. You've seen these before in museum photos, though now they're still warm from a human hand. Thousands of steatite seals from the Indus Valley depict animals, plants, and mysterious symbols. They might have functioned as identification marks for traders or storage units, acting like early logos. It's possible that every farmer or every clan had their own mark.
You pause and wonder, what would yours be? Maybe a sleepy buffalo, eyes half closed, reminding everyone that even hard work deserves rest. Later, you sit by a hearth where a few villagers are relaxing after the long day. Someone passes around a drink, milky, fermented, faintly bitter. You sip and feel warmth bloom in your chest. Another bowl appears, this one filled with something thick and grayish, lentil stew. You dip a piece of bread into it, savoring the texture. It's humble food, but there's something anciently perfect about it. A man gestures at the granary across the way and says something that sounds reverent. You can tell he's proud. He taps his chest, then points at the building again, his way of saying, "We made that." You nod. You get it. Night creeps in quietly. The fields are dark silhouettes against the horizon, the river gleaming faintly under the moon. A few lamps flicker near the granary doors, their flames dancing in sesame oil. The air smells faintly of baked earth, smoke, and grain. A quirky thought crosses your mind. Perhaps the Indus people told bedtime stories about their granaries, giant beasts guarding the stores, or mischievous spirits that sneak into jars at night. Maybe parents whispered such tales to keep children from sneaking extra grain. "Sleep now," they'd say, "or the granary guardian will hear you chewing." You chuckle quietly, imagining wide-eyed kids swearing they heard something rustle in the dark. Historians still argue whether famine ever struck this civilization before its decline. There are no obvious signs of widespread hunger, suggesting they managed their resources wisely for centuries. The granaries, the careful storage, the communal routines, all of it speaks to a society that valued foresight. They didn't just live in the moment, they planned for many tomorrows. You lie back against a warm wall, gazing at the moonlit rooftops. Somewhere, a grinding stone still turns softly, a lullaby for a civilization that never truly sleeps. You close your eyes, imagining the countless generations who repeated these motions, turning grain into sustenance, sustenance into life. It's comforting to know that survival here isn't frantic. It's steady, cyclical, patient, just like the grinding stones themselves, circling endlessly, always returning to where they began. The sun rises with a soft orange glow, slipping across the fields where the aftermath of the harvest still lingers. You wake to the gentle clatter of children chasing each other around piles of straw, the occasional bleat of a goat, and the faint whisper of wind brushing over dried stalks. Today, you're stepping into a different rhythm, the art and care of irrigation and water management that makes the Indus Valley's agriculture possible. You follow a narrow earthen channel leading from the river toward the fields. Water trickles steadily through the mud-lined ditch, reflecting the morning sun in flickering patterns. Along its edges, reeds sway gently and tiny dragonflies hover above the surface. The channel forks, one arm bending toward a wheat field, another stretching to a patch of barley. You kneel at the edge and dip a hand in. The cool water is life itself, carrying more than just moisture. It carries centuries of ingenuity. The Indus Valley Civilization developed sophisticated water management systems, including canals, wells, and reservoirs to control seasonal flooding and irrigate crops. Archaeological evidence shows planned channels leading directly to fields, indicating a high level of engineering and understanding of hydrology. You follow a farmer as he steps carefully along the channel, checking small wooden gates. These gates regulate flow, directing water precisely where it's needed. With a gentle lift, he opens one sluice, allowing a measured stream to flood a dry field. The soil swells, darkening instantly, ready to nurture new crops. You watch as the furrows fill, the tiny ridges catching sunlight like miniature ridged mirrors. Nearby, children play along the banks, dipping their hands in the moving water, flicking droplets at each other. You notice that even their games follow patterns, circling the water, skipping along the banks,
almost as if the river's rhythm seeps into them from birth. A quirky thought drifts through your mind. Perhaps some of their earliest math lessons came from counting how many steps it takes to move from one sluice to the next, or timing how long it takes for water to reach the far corner of the field. Who knew hydrology could double as playtime?
Historians still argue whether the canal networks were centrally managed or maintained by local communities. Some evidence suggests coordinated efforts, hinting at civic planning beyond individual villages. Other scholars believe that families maintained channels themselves, working together only when seasonal floods demanded collective effort. Either way, the system is elegant, adaptive, efficient, and resilient.
You walk along a small raised path between two fields. The soil here is soft from recent irrigation, clinging faintly to your sandals. The fields themselves are a patchwork of gold and green, some still carrying remnants of harvested barley, others planted anew with legumes. Each plot is framed by tiny ridges, guiding water carefully across the surface, ensuring every seed gets enough without drowning. You pause to run a hand across the soil. It's moist, pliable, almost tactile poetry in the palm of your hand.
A farmer kneels nearby, using a long stick to test soil depth and moisture. You bend to watch. It's an intuitive process, no gauges, no modern meters, just experience, observation, and patience. The Indus farmers knew their land intimately, able to predict how much water a field needed by feel, smell, and sight. You realize that this knowledge was passed down over generations, quietly stitched into memory like embroidery on a familiar cloth. Wells were another critical part of their water systems. Many Indus sites contained deep, brick-lined wells, some with steps leading down to the water. These wells were not just for drinking. They also provided a constant irrigation source during dry periods, demonstrating a remarkable understanding of water table management. You follow a narrow trench toward a sunken courtyard where women are washing freshly harvested vegetables. The water pools here, carefully channeled from the nearby canal. As they rinse leafy greens, you notice the precision with which they avoid wasting a single drop. The liquid circulates from one basin to another, eventually seeping back into the ground. Even in play or domestic chores, efficiency reigns. A child approaches with a small clay pot, dropping it gently into a shallow pool to fill. You watch them tip the vessel carefully, letting the water reach the brim without spilling. It's mesmerizing in its simplicity, a small echo of the same logic that governs the irrigation channels in the fields beyond. Every drop is valued, every motion deliberate. Quirky tidbit? Some archaeologists speculate that the Indus engineers used wooden weirs and bamboo pipes to guide water across short distances. If true, this would mean small-scale portable irrigation devices existed thousands of years before modern plumbing. A combination of genius and practicality that almost feels like magic.
You walk further along the canals, noticing how the water reflects the sky above. Clouds drift lazily, mirrored perfectly in the shallow channels. Ducks paddle in a few spots, their movement causing ripples that extend outward in perfect concentric circles. You pause to trace one ripple with your fingertip and realize the slow, meditative cadence of water management mirrors the rhythm of life here. Careful, patient, enduring.
Historians still argue about the extent of central planning involved in Indus irrigation. Some suggest city councils or governing bodies dictated canal construction to prevent conflicts over water. Others think that local cooperation sufficed, guided by custom and social norms rather than formal authority. Either interpretation speaks to the balance of autonomy and collective responsibility, a theme repeated across the Indus landscape.
You follow the largest canal toward a reservoir, a wide, shallow basin framed by baked bricks. The water shimmers in the sun, inviting and calm. Farmers occasionally draw water with clay pots tied to ropes, dipping them carefully before raising them in smooth arcs.
Children play near the edge, occasionally tipping in toes or skipping stones. The scene is domestic, mundane even, yet vital. Without this network, the fields beyond would be barren, the harvests meager.
You notice an older man standing by the reservoir, arms crossed, eyes scanning the water. He gestures, pointing at small sediment deposits along the edges. His movements are subtle but precise, communicating lessons invisible to outsiders. Which areas drain slowly, which channels need clearing, which fields will need more attention in the coming weeks. This knowledge, though quiet, is crucial to survival.
Evidence from Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro shows reservoirs capable of storing massive amounts of water, likely for both human consumption and irrigation. These reservoirs, combined with the canal networks, represent one of the earliest examples of urban water management in human history, demonstrating remarkable foresight and engineering skill. As the sun climbs higher, you notice how the villagers' daily rhythms are intimately tied to water. Fields are flooded, animals drink, pots are washed, and seeds are watered. The flow of life seems inseparable from the flow of water. Even rest and recreation happen nearby: fishing, playful splashes, and quiet conversation. Water isn't just utility here, it's central to their experience of the world. A quirky thought crosses your mind. Perhaps these irrigation channels were also minor entertainment. Children might have floated small clay boats or watched water spin leaves along their course. Even the dullest canals can hold small wonders when imagination meets necessity.
By late afternoon, the canals have served their purpose. Water is drawn to every plot. Livestock are watered, and the earth drinks deeply. The village settles into calm. Farmers wipe sweat from their brows. Children wander home, and women gather near the reservoirs to chat while drawing water for evening cooking. You lean against a canal embankment and watch the sunlight shimmer over the ripples, feeling a profound sense of connection to every hand that shaped this system.
Historians still debate whether these canals were maintained seasonally or continuously. Some argue maintenance was a collective responsibility, passed down from one generation to the next. Others believe only certain families or guilds specialized in canal upkeep. Either way, the water flows faithfully, like a quiet hymn of civilization. As dusk approaches, the village grows hushed. Ducks return to the water, oxen settle near fields, and the river beyond glows faintly silver. You take a deep breath of the moist, earthy air and realize that the Indus Valley thrived not by accident, but through careful observation, patient labor, and an understanding of natural cycles. Their success lies not just in what they grew, but in how they guided and respected the water that sustained it. You close your eyes as the first stars appear, imagining the channels flowing endlessly, the reservoirs reflecting moonlight, and the steady pulse of life carried on every drop. Civilization, you think, is built on water as much as stone, and patience as much as innovation. The morning unfolds gently, carrying a hint of coolness that has slipped in after the irrigation work of yesterday. You wake to the quiet hum of villagers preparing for another cycle of agricultural routine, though today your attention is drawn to a different rhythm: the planting and nurturing of crops for the coming season. Fields stretch before you, and you can almost feel the anticipation vibrating through the soil, as if it knows that new life is about to emerge. You walk along a narrow path that winds between furrows, noticing the faint glint of damp earth where water has pooled overnight. A young man steps into your path, carrying a small sack of seeds balanced against his shoulder. He kneels carefully at the edge of a furrow, scattering the seeds with a rhythmic motion. Some fall in neat clusters, others drift slightly into the spaces between rows. You realize that the distribution is intentional, based on years of observation, a balance between density for yield and spacing for sunlight and airflow.
Mainstream fact: archaeological evidence from sites like Harappa and Kalibangan shows that the Indus Valley farmers practiced crop rotation and intercropping. They cultivated wheat, barley, legumes, and cotton in strategic combinations to maintain soil fertility and reduce pest infestations. This practice demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of agriculture far beyond mere subsistence.
You crouch to watch a young girl using a small wooden dibber to create holes for seeds. Her movements are deliberate, almost meditative, pressing each seed into the soil with precision. Every so often, she taps her foot lightly, a subtle rhythm that seems to echo the heartbeat of the land itself. Children here are integrated into the cycle of life in ways you rarely see today. Their play often mirrors productive work, blending learning and leisure seamlessly.
Some archaeologists have suggested that miniature clay models of plows and carts may have been used as teaching tools for children. You imagine a little boy in the corner of a courtyard moving a tiny plow through a patch of soil while mimicking the motions of adults. Perhaps this was their earliest classroom, hands-on and endlessly patient.
Historians still argue whether these models were strictly educational or also held symbolic or ritual value. Some think they represented wishes for fertility and success in the fields, while others maintain they were practical tools for passing down agricultural knowledge. Either interpretation adds depth to your understanding of how central farming was to everyday life in the Indus Valley. You wander deeper into the fields, following the furrows as they stretch toward the horizon. A low breeze stirs, carrying the scent of fresh earth and the faint hint of flowering mustard. The soil is soft underfoot, pliable and yielding, yet it clings to your sandals in sticky patches. You notice that the farmers are using a combination of hand labor and simple tools to plant seeds. Long sticks, short hoes, and wooden dibbers all move through the earth in coordinated motion, each step measured, each movement considered.
Nearby, a woman scatters pulses into the soil, her hands moving with a gentle fluidity that seems almost choreographed. You realize she's taking care not to bury the seeds too deep, an instinct likely honed over years of trial and error. It's an elegant balance between the constraints of nature and the will of human hands. Mainstream fact: evidence from Kalibangan shows that the Indus Valley farmers created raised beds and furrows to improve drainage and soil aeration, particularly for crops like barley and wheat. This practice not only improved yields, but also protected against soil erosion and waterlogging during seasonal floods. You pause by a small mound, where an elder is supervising a group of younger workers. They are planting rows of mustard, taking care to alternate with pulses to maximize soil nutrients. You notice him pointing occasionally, his gestures clear yet patient, emphasizing spacing, direction, and even the timing of sowing. You understand that this knowledge is a kind of living memory, passed silently from one generation to the next, embodied in the rhythm of hands and feet. In some sites, archaeologists have found terracotta figurines holding what look like miniature plows or seed baskets. Some suggest these were symbolic offerings to ensure a bountiful harvest, blending practical farming with spiritual belief. You imagine villagers whispering small prayers over each furrow, a gentle charm for the seeds to thrive. As midday approaches, the field begins to take shape, a patterned mosaic of soil, seed, and occasional greenery. You watch a young boy carefully mark rows with a thin stick, ensuring the spacing remains even. The precision is almost artistic. Every line, every furrow becomes part of a quiet visual language, one that communicates order, care, and foresight. Historians still argue about the extent to which planting strategies were standardized versus learned individually. Some think there was a universal method taught across settlements, while others suggest that families developed unique approaches suited to their local soils and microclimates. Either way, the results are striking in their consistency and efficiency. You wander toward the edge of the field, where a small canal feeds into the irrigation system. Women are using shallow baskets to divert water toward freshly planted plots, ensuring that the seeds settle into moist earth.
The sound of moving water mixes with laughter and the occasional clatter of tools, a harmonious soundtrack of life sustained by human care. Mainstream fact. Evidence suggests that the Indus Valley people also used rainwater harvesting techniques, filling small reservoirs and diverting runoff to fields during drier months. This combination of river and rainwater management allowed for year-round cultivation, demonstrating an early mastery of environmental adaptation. A gentle breeze carries a flock of birds over the fields. They swoop and dip, picking at seeds left unplanted or the occasional insect stirred by human activity. You watch as a few crows land nearby, hopping carefully through the furrows, pecking here and there. The farmers barely notice. Coexistence with nature is part of their rhythm, not a disruption. You crouch by a mound of freshly planted lentils, feeling the soil through your fingers. It's soft, damp, and smells faintly of minerals and growth. The process is slow but deliberate. You realize that the act of planting is more than labor. It's an exercise in patience, faith, and subtle artistry. Perhaps these farmers imagined the seeds as tiny travelers, each one embarking on its own journey underground. Every root that sprouts could be seen as a messenger of the land's promise, a quiet success story in miniature. As afternoon approaches, the sun casts long shadows over the furrows. The planted seeds glisten faintly in the light, each one a testament to human care and observation. The canal waters shimmer in the heat, reflecting small movements of reeds, birds, and distant oxen. You take a deep breath, inhaling the earthy perfume of the fields, and feel a profound connection to this ancient cycle of planting and growth. Historians still debate whether crop selection was guided more by environmental conditions or by social and trade considerations. Some evidence suggests that surplus crops were chosen with trade in mind, while subsistence needs dictated other choices. Either way, planting wasn't just a physical task, it was an intricate negotiation with nature, climate, and society. You walk slowly back toward the village, noting the neat rows of freshly planted crops. Each furrow, each mound of soil, carries with it the promise of future harvests, the quiet knowledge of generations, and the rhythm of human hands attuned to the land. You pause to watch a woman adjust a small irrigation channel, ensuring that water reaches the right spots. The sun dips low, casting golden light across the fields. As evening settles, the village hums softly around you. Children chase each other along the banks, women gather water for evening meals, and men discuss the day's work with quiet satisfaction. You lean back against a warm mud wall and realize that planting is more than a practical necessity. It is a meditation, a dialogue with the earth that requires observation, care, and gentle persistence. The day fades into twilight, and you close your eyes, feeling the steady pulse of the land beneath you. Each planted seed carries the hope of life, the knowledge of the past, and the promise of future cycles, reminding you that civilization, at its core, grows slowly, patiently, and with unwavering attention. The day opens with a muted light, the kind that slides gently over the mud brick rooftops and dances along the furrows of freshly planted fields. You wake to a softer, quieter rhythm, the subtle work of weeding and tending, the meticulous care that ensures the seeds you watched planted in Section 11 will thrive. Today, your focus is on the delicate balance of nurturing crops, observing growth, and maintaining harmony with both soil and water. You step into the fields, feeling the early morning dew dampen the soles of your sandals. Rows of barley and lentils stand in tentative green, swaying gently with the breeze. Farmers move among them, hands brushing lightly against stalks, checking leaves for color and strength. A woman kneels, plucking out a weed that is rooted too close to a promising seedling, tossing it aside with practiced precision. Her movements are subtle yet deliberate, each action informed by years of observation.
Evidence from Indus Valley sites like Kalibangan and Harappa suggests that the people practiced intercropping and careful field maintenance, pulling weeds and managing plant spacing to optimize yields. This level of agricultural sophistication allowed them to maintain fertility without modern fertilizers. You watch a young boy carefully inspect a small patch of mustard. His fingers trace the stems, tapping leaves gently to detect any pest presence. Nearby, a girl hums softly, plucking tiny insects off pulses and letting them fall to the ground. It's a silent, almost ritualistic cooperation with the land, a conversation between humans and soil that requires patience, attention, and intuition. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Archaeologists have found evidence of charred plant residues, which suggests that the Indus farmers sometimes used controlled burning to clear weeds or refresh soil nutrients. Imagine the smoky scent drifting across the fields, while farmers quietly encourage the earth to renew itself, an early form of environmental management that feels both practical and ceremonial. Historians still debate whether these early techniques were intentionally planned or evolved more organically through trial and error. Some argue that systematic field care indicates centralized knowledge sharing, perhaps through community elders or guilds, while others suggest it emerged from individual household experience over generations. Either way, the results speak of a people deeply attuned to their environment. As the sun climbs, you notice subtle differences in soil texture and moisture across the fields. Farmers adjust irrigation accordingly, opening small sluices or guiding water along temporary channels. You kneel beside one, dipping your hand into the furrowed water and feeling the cool current slide over your fingers. Even in its simplicity, the method is elegant, controlled, precise, and remarkably sustainable. A woman passes by with a basket of organic matter, composted plant material from previous harvests. She kneels, sprinkling it gently along the base of young plants. The smell is earthy, faintly sweet. You inhale deeply, sensing the promise of growth, of nourishment returning to the soil. In this cycle, waste becomes resource, debris becomes sustenance, and every fragment of matter holds potential. Mainstream fact: studies of Indus agricultural practices indicate a sophisticated understanding of soil enrichment, including composting and crop rotation. These methods not only supported sustainable yields, but also reduced susceptibility to pests and erosion. You wander to the edges of the fields, where small piles of harvested straw are stacked for later use as fodder, bedding, or mulching. A boy gathers loose stalks, tying them into bundles and dragging them toward storage. The sun catches the tips of the stalks, turning them a pale gold. The scene is tranquil yet industrious, a harmony of labor and environment that feels timeless. Some quirky observation: some terracotta models depict small plows and oxen, leading archaeologists to speculate that children or apprentices may have learned field care through hands-on play, mimicking adult labor in miniature form. You imagine a child tracing furrows with tiny hands, practicing techniques long before touching a real plow. The learning here is intimate, tactile, and embedded in daily life. You notice a few elders seated on low stools near the irrigation channels, quietly observing. They gesture occasionally, pointing at a plant or tilting a head toward a furrow. Their guidance is subtle, almost like choreography, an unseen hand shaping the rhythm of the fields. You realize that agricultural knowledge is both practical and social, communicated through gesture, example, and quiet attention, rather than written instruction. Historians still argue about the balance between communal guidance and household autonomy in tending crops. Some evidence points to village-level coordination for large plots, while smaller plots appear to have been managed independently. The careful maintenance of irrigation, spacing, and soil quality suggests a combination of shared wisdom and individual responsibility. As midday approaches, the air grows warmer,
and farmers take brief rests, gathering under trees or near the canal banks. You pause beside a small pool where water reflects the sky in fragmented patches. The reflections shimmer with movement as birds swoop low, dipping beaks into the water. You watch the interaction of light and light, feeling the subtle poetry of daily agricultural care. You move on to a small mound of soil where legumes are beginning to sprout. Tiny green shoots push upward through the earth, trembling slightly in the breeze. A girl kneels beside them, tracing each row with a careful finger, making sure none are crowded, none overtaken by weeds. The attention to detail is almost hypnotic. Every action has a purpose, yet none feels rushed. Mainstream fact: archaeobotanical evidence from Indus Valley settlements indicates that leguminous crops, such as lentils and peas, were used not only for human consumption, but also to replenish nitrogen in the soil, demonstrating an early understanding of crop nutrition. A curious thought drifts in your mind. Perhaps these young farmers regarded weeds and pests with both wariness and fascination, noting their habits, tracking their presence, and subtly learning the ecological balance of their fields. Knowledge was accumulated not in books, but in eyes, hands, and memory. By late afternoon, the sun softens, casting long shadows across the furrows. Farmers pause to check irrigation gates, adjust small channels, and inspect soil moisture. The fields are alive not only with plants, but with motion, intention, and care. You notice the soundscape, the quiet scraping of hands in soil, the distant calls of children, the occasional clatter of a basket set down on sun-baked earth. It's a rhythm you could sink into, a lullaby of labor and life. Historians still debate whether field tending was seasonal or a continuous practice throughout the growing period. Some suggest daily attention was required to maintain optimal soil conditions, while others believe periodic checks sufficed, with natural rainfall providing supplemental care. Either way, the results are impressive. Lush, organized plots ready to sustain communities. You wander to the edge of a canal, watching a farmer pour a small clay vessel of water over a row of tender shoots. The water seeps slowly, darkening the soil around each plant. The sun glints on the wet earth, tiny diamonds of reflected light sparkling with the promise of growth. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the faint rustle of leaves, the hum of insects, and the distant chatter of villagers. A quirky detail, some terracotta figurines depict women holding bundles of plants, perhaps as offerings or symbols of fertility and care. You imagine villagers whispering quiet prayers to the soil itself, asking for strength, health, and productivity, blending practical maintenance with gentle ritual. As evening approaches, the villagers gather their tools, carrying baskets of compost, small hand implements, and irrigation vessels back to the storage areas. The fields stand in quiet order, neat rows and carefully spaced plants basking in the soft amber light. You lean back against a cool wall, feeling the warmth of the day seep through your skin. The work is continuous yet calming, repetitive yet purposeful. Every motion, planting, watering, weeding, observing, feeds the next, creating a cycle that sustains life and nurtures civilization itself. You close your eyes, imagining the tiny roots stretching, the seedlings swaying, and the quiet pulse of life beneath the soil, safe, tended, and full of potential. Morning light spills softly over the village, casting long shadows across the fields and glimmering on the still waters of irrigation channels. You wake to the gentle murmur of the Indus Valley community settling into a new rhythm. Today, your attention drifts to the harvesting and processing of cotton, a crop that has quietly woven itself into the fabric of daily life here, long before anyone imagined textile markets or spinning wheels. You walk along a narrow path, flanked by green fields dotted with cotton plants. Tiny white tufts peek out from the rough green leaves like scattered clouds resting among the stalks. A woman kneels, carefully plucking the fluffy fibers from each boll,
holding them in a large woven basket beside her. The cotton is soft to the touch, light yet substantial, as if it carries the potential of warmth and comfort in every strand. Archaeological evidence from sites like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa indicates that the Indus Valley Civilization was among the earliest to cultivate and use cotton for textiles. Impressions of cotton in clay seals and remnants of woven fabrics suggest a thriving domestic industry thousands of years before much of the known world discovered the crop. You step closer, noting the precision of the harvesting process. Each boll is handled delicately, ensuring that fibers are kept intact and free from debris. A young girl sits nearby, carefully teasing out small seeds with a pointed stick. The seeds aren't wasted. They're collected for future planting, pressed into cakes for oil, or even used as animal feed. Efficiency is everywhere, from seed to fiber, reflecting a culture that leaves little to chance. Some archaeologists speculate that Indus cotton may have been dyed with natural plant pigments, though the evidence is fragmentary. You imagine a small courtyard in the evening, women gently rubbing petals, roots, or leaves over cotton, infusing it with color and life, while children play nearby and the scent of crushed vegetation hangs in the air. Historians still debate the exact methods of early Indus cotton processing. Some suggest that fibers were hand-spun into threads using simple spindles, while others think they may have been woven directly in small primitive looms. Either way, it's clear that cotton held economic, domestic, and perhaps even ceremonial importance in daily life. You follow a young man to a small covered area where fibers are being carded. He uses a flat wooden tool to tease apart clumps of cotton, creating airy, uniform bundles. The rhythm is slow, almost hypnotic, and you notice a faint smile on his face as he works, as if the repetitive motion brings its own quiet satisfaction. You realize that each step in the process, no matter how mundane it seems, carries the promise of something functional and beautiful. Fragments of spindle whorls found at Indus Valley sites suggest that spinning threads from cotton fibers was a routine domestic task, often carried out by women. This allowed communities to produce textiles for clothing, household items, and possibly trade with neighboring regions. Nearby, a child is rolling small tufts of cotton into neat balls. The action is simple, yet essential. It organizes the fibers for easier spinning. You watch the child pause, holding a ball up to the sun and turning it slowly, as though admiring the transformation from raw plant matter into something refined. It's easy to imagine that these small, repetitive tasks instilled patience, dexterity, and an appreciation for the interconnectedness of labor and life. Some terracotta figurines depict women holding what appear to be bundles of fiber or weaving implements. Archaeologists debate whether these are symbolic representations of fertility and abundance or literal snapshots of daily labor. Either way, the figurines hint at a cultural awareness of cotton's importance beyond mere utility. As the sun rises higher, you notice that the cotton fields are bordered by small irrigation channels. Water is carefully managed, flowing just enough to sustain the plants without oversaturating the soil. You dip a hand into the channel, feeling the cool flow against your skin. The thought occurs that every crop in the Indus Valley, whether grain, legumes, or cotton, depends not only on human labor, but also on the delicate interplay of water, soil, and sunlight. Historians still argue whether cotton cultivation in the Indus Valley was primarily for local consumption or trade. Some evidence points to widespread use within households for clothing and bedding, while other signs hint at early commerce, with cotton fibers or textiles being exchanged with neighboring regions. The truth is likely a blend of both, practical necessity infused with economic foresight. You move to a shaded corner where women are sorting cotton fibers by quality. Soft, fine strands are separated from coarser ones. Some fibers are long, ideal for weaving, while others are short, destined for padding or insulation. The attention to detail is astonishing. Even slight imperfections are noted and redirected for alternate use. You realize that every decision here carries implications for comfort, durability, and survival.
A small boy brings a handful of seeds to a woman, who nods approvingly. The seeds will be saved for the next planting cycle. There's a tangible sense of continuity here. Labor today feeds tomorrow, and every strand of cotton, every seed, every tuft of fiber is part of an ongoing dialogue with the land. Mainstream fact: the discovery of cotton seeds, spinning tools, and textile impressions in the Indus Valley points to an integrated system of cultivation, processing, and weaving. It's one of the earliest examples of a vertically integrated domestic industry, highlighting both ingenuity and sustainability. You pause by a small loom where a girl is practicing simple weaving patterns. The fibers are loosely spun, and the finished strips are short, yet you notice the care in each pass of the shuttle. Patterns are simple, geometric, and repetitive, but the rhythm is hypnotic. You almost hear the faint whisper of history in the motion, the echo of countless hands weaving for warmth, comfort, and identity. Perhaps the first Indus Valley fashion critics were children pointing out uneven threads or imperfect alignment. Maybe household pride was expressed through tiny, meticulous details in fabric, a reminder that beauty and utility often coexist in the simplest of forms. As afternoon approaches, the cotton bundles are gathered into baskets, ready to be stored or transported. You notice the care with which the baskets are carried. Straw padding protects the fibers, and the carriers walk slowly, almost reverently. The air is filled with the faint scent of sun-warmed cotton, mingling with dust and the earthy fragrance of nearby soil. Historians still debate whether cotton textiles played a ceremonial role in addition to their practical applications. Some evidence suggests that finely woven fabrics may have been used in rituals, offerings, or symbolic displays, while other scholars argue that most production was strictly utilitarian. Either perspective underscores the versatility and cultural significance of this humble fiber. You wander toward the canal, where a few children are dipping small tufts of cotton into water, spinning them between fingers, and watching fibers expand and soften. It's playful yet educational, reinforcing lessons about texture, flexibility, and transformation. Even in their games, the rhythms of labor and learning intertwine. As evening settles, the sun dips low, casting a warm amber glow over the fields. Farmers and children alike carry baskets of harvested cotton back to storage areas, while women carefully inspect fibers one last time. The village hums with quiet satisfaction. The day's labor has yielded both sustenance and potential, from food to fabric, from seeds to finished threads. You sit on a low wall, feeling the warmth of the sun-soaked bricks. The soft rustle of cotton fibers, the distant babble of water, and the hum of human activity create a meditative symphony. You realize that cultivation isn't merely a physical act. It's an ongoing dialogue between humans, plants, and the environment, a rhythm of care, patience, and intention that sustains life and nurtures civilization itself. The sun has just begun to stretch across the horizon, spilling golden light over the village and igniting a soft shimmer on the brick-lined streets. You wake to the quiet stirrings of the morning, the air rich with the faint scent of damp soil, drying clay, and distant cooking fires. Today, your journey takes you deeper into the practical tools and implements that support Indus Valley farming, the handcrafted instruments that make all this labor possible, yet are so elegantly simple you might almost overlook them. You walk toward a small workshop at the edge of the village. It's open to the air, shaded only by a palm thatch roof, and the first thing that strikes you is the stillness. Tools are arranged carefully: wooden plows, sickles with curved blades, querns for grinding grain, and small dibbers for planting seeds. Everything has its place, each item shaped by both necessity and habit. You kneel to examine a short-handled wooden plow. Its edges are worn smooth from years of use, and yet the metal tip gleams faintly, a testament to repairs and care.
Mainstream fact have uncovered a variety of farming implements at Indus Valley sites, including plows, sickles, and digging sticks. These tools reveal both innovation and adaptation to local conditions, illustrating an intimate understanding of soil types, seasonal changes, and crop needs. You pick up a curved sickle, noting how the handle fits snugly into your hand. The blade has been sharpened repeatedly, its edges honed to slice stalks with minimal effort. You imagine walking through golden fields of ripened barley, the blade cutting cleanly at the base of each stalk, grains ready to be collected. The rhythmic motion is almost hypnotic, a dance between human effort and natural bounty. Nearby, a young girl demonstrates a simple dibber, a pointed wooden stick used to poke small holes for seeds. She presses it into the soil, drops a seed in, and gently covers it with earth. The technique is deceptively simple, yet perfectly effective. Watching her, you sense the quiet wisdom in small, repetitive actions. Movements refined over generations, repeated countless times, and passed down through hands that understood both practicality and rhythm. Archaeologists have found miniature versions of plows and dibbers, likely used as teaching tools for children. You imagine a little one practicing on a tiny plot of soil, learning the motions while thinking of it as play. A hands-on apprenticeship disguised as amusement. Historians still argue whether these tools were standardized across the region or varied by household. Some evidence suggests a common design, perhaps taught by elders or traded between settlements, while other artifacts reveal local innovation adapted to specific soils or crops. Either way, the ingenuity is unmistakable. Simple designs, highly functional, and perfectly suited to the life they support. You wander toward a small storage area where spare blades and wooden handles are kept. A man is sharpening a sickle on a flat stone, producing a faint, rhythmic rasp that blends with the ambient sounds of the village. Sparks don't fly, but dust rises gently, catching sunlight like tiny motes suspended in air. It's quiet, meditative work, an act of care that ensures tomorrow's harvests will proceed smoothly. Mainstream fact: some tools from the Indus Valley show evidence of repeated repair and replacement of parts, suggesting a culture that valued sustainability, resourcefulness, and long-term planning. Tools weren't disposable, they were cherished and maintained.
You move on to a small team using wooden hose to loosen soil in a newly prepared plot. The tools glide through earth that has already been softened by irrigation, and each motion is deliberate. You notice the subtle differences in technique. Some people push the hoe forward with steady pressure. Others pull back with rhythmic pulls. Despite variations, the goal is shared. Aerate the soil, break up clumps, and prepare it for sowing. A quirky detail in clay suggests that some tools may have doubled as simple measuring devices. For instance, marks on plow shafts or handles might have indicated furrow depth or spacing. You imagine farmers carefully lining up each row with a subtle mental ruler, turning routine labor into a precise art. As midday approaches, the sun casts long shadows over the workshop and adjacent fields. Children play nearby, occasionally mimicking the movements of adults, lifting small sticks, pretending to plow, or holding tiny bundles of straw. Their imitation is charming, yet functional, training hands and minds in the skills that will sustain them in years to come. Historians still debate the extent to which formal instruction occurred in tool use. Some evidence points to mentorship within households, while other clues suggest community-based guidance. Either scenario emphasizes that skill, memory, and observation were as essential as muscle, creating a continuous cycle of knowledge transmission. You pause at a small quern where grain is being ground. The motion is slow, repetitive, and rhythmic, perfectly aligned with the steady pace of the day. You notice that even the design of the quern is ergonomic, allowing continuous work without unnecessary strain. It's a quiet testimony to human adaptation. Form shaped to function,
function shaped to daily life. Mainstream fact: thousands of stone querns and grinding tools have been found at Indus Valley settlements, suggesting household-level grain processing was standard. These tools were central to daily nutrition and community resilience. A woman passes by, carrying a wooden bucket filled with composted material. She tips a little onto a mound of soil near the workshop, blending it in with care. You watch as the enriched earth darkens, ready to support future crops. It's a simple act, yet one that ties directly to every plow stroke, every dibber poke, every seed planted in the cycle of care that sustains the village. Some quirky observation: some clay figurines depict farmers holding tools with exaggerated hands or oversized implements. Some scholars argue these might represent symbolic blessings for productivity, while others see them as artistic exaggeration to emphasize labor's importance. Either interpretation adds depth to your understanding of the cultural significance of tools. By afternoon, the sun warms the bricks and soil, and the rhythmic sounds of tool use create a soft symphony. Rasping of blades, tapping of wooden dibbers, and the occasional clatter of baskets. You lean against a wall, watching villagers coordinate tasks, repairing tools, sharpening blades, tending plots, and occasionally exchanging advice or laughter. There's a profound elegance to the way labor is organized, individual effort contributing to a harmonious living system.
Historians still argue about whether these tools evolved independently in each settlement or spread through regional trade and communication. Some suggest long-distance exchange of knowledge. Others emphasize local innovation. Either way, the continuity and refinement of tools underscore a remarkable human ingenuity deeply attuned to daily survival.
As evening approaches, villagers gather their implements, carefully cleaning, repairing, and storing them for the night. Dust settles gently over the workshop, sunlight fades, and a soft hush envelops the fields. You take a moment to run your hands over a polished wooden handle, feeling centuries of tactile knowledge embedded in its shape. The echo of hands that shaped it, maintained it, and used it to nurture life. You realize that tools, in this context, are more than instruments. They are extensions of human care, patience, and observation. Each blade, stick, and quern carries lessons of survival, efficiency, and rhythm, linking individual effort to the broader cycles of agriculture, family, and community. You close your eyes, hearing the faint imagined hum of blades moving through soil, of hands guiding seeds, and of human ingenuity silently shaping the world. The day begins with a soft, diffused light spilling across the fields where every furrow, every seed, and every tool carries the weight of generations. You wake to the gentle hum of village life, though your attention today is drawn to a slower, quieter practice, the post-harvest care and storage of grains. This is the final act in the long, intricate choreography of agriculture, a delicate balance of preservation, organization, and foresight that ensures life continues through seasons and cycles. You walk along a narrow path lined with earthen granaries. Their walls are thick, sun-baked, and strong, designed to withstand both weather and the curious beak of a bird or nibble of a rodent. You pause to touch one of the surfaces. It feels cool, solid, and reassuring under your fingers. Inside, grains of wheat, barley, and pulses are stacked carefully in baskets and clay jars, separated by type and quality. The air carries a faint, sweet aroma, a combination of cereal, earth, and storage clay. Mainstream fact settlements show evidence of granaries and storage facilities at Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, and other sites. These structures were raised on platforms to protect against moisture and pests, reflecting sophisticated planning for surplus management and food security. You notice a farmer kneeling beside a stack of jars, carefully covering each one with woven lids. His movements are patient, almost ceremonial, ensuring that no grain is exposed to moisture or contamination. Every action is deliberate, a quiet promise to the future that the effort of planting, tending, and harvesting will not be lost.
A quirky thought crosses your mind. Some jars found at Indus sites have tiny animal motifs etched into their surfaces. Perhaps they were meant to ward off pests, or maybe they were simply decorative flourishes. You imagine villagers chuckling quietly as they stacked jars, feeling a small sense of personal pride in both function and artistry. Historians still argue whether these storage practices were standardized across settlements or developed independently within households. Some evidence suggests coordinated village-level granaries, while other findings point to decentralized, family-managed storage. Either way, the priority is clear: preservation, efficiency, and sustainability.
You move along a platform where loose grains are spread out to dry in the gentle morning sun. You bend to feel the texture, smooth, firm, and cool beneath your fingertips. Farmers occasionally rake the grains gently, turning them over to ensure uniform drying. The process is slow, rhythmic, and almost meditative. Each motion carries centuries of experience, distilled into gestures that are at once practical and calming. Mainstream fact: archaeological studies indicate that drying grains before storage was a critical step in preventing spoilage, highlighting the Indus Valley Civilization's understanding of basic food safety and preservation techniques. Nearby, a child helps by gently scooping grains into small baskets, mimicking adult movements. The child's attention is keen, their small hands surprisingly adept. You notice the quiet instruction embedded in the process. Observation, repetition, and imitation are how knowledge is transmitted across generations. Even play here is productive, blurring the line between learning and daily life. A quirky observation: some terracotta figurines depict children with miniature tools or baskets, suggesting that hands-on learning was part of cultural continuity. Perhaps every grain handled was also a lesson in care, rhythm, and patience, a playful apprenticeship woven into the flow of life. You pause beside a large storage jar and watch a woman gently tamping down pulses to maximize space. The sound is soft, almost musical, the low thud of seeds settling in a container. She works slowly, deliberately, ensuring the layers are compact yet uncrushed. The rhythm is hypnotic, each motion echoing the long history of careful management and human ingenuity. Historians still debate whether Indus granaries were primarily for local consumption or also for trade and taxation purposes. Some argue that surplus storage indicates early economic systems beyond mere subsistence, while others emphasize household and community survival. Either interpretation underscores the importance of planning and foresight in maintaining social stability. As the sun rises higher, you notice the interplay of light and shadow across the granary platforms. Dust motes float lazily in the air, catching the sun's glow like tiny stars suspended in space. You take a slow breath, inhaling the warm, earthy scent of grains, clay, and sun-baked soil. The sensory experience is grounding, almost hypnotic, connecting you to the slow, deliberate pulse of the village and its agricultural life. Mainstream fact: evidence from Indus sites shows the use of clay-lined granaries and jars, raised platforms, and separation of different grains, reflecting a sophisticated approach to food storage that minimized risk of spoilage and pest infestation. A young boy sweeps the floor gently, clearing stray grains and dust. His movements are careful, almost reverent. You realize that every action here is intentional. The handling of grains, the cleaning of surfaces, the monitoring of storage conditions, all are part of a quiet, ongoing conversation between humans and their environment. A quirky detail: some jars were sealed with clay stoppers or even small clay figurines pressed into the tops. Perhaps it was practical, perhaps symbolic, or maybe both. A subtle interplay of function and cultural expression, reminding us that even mundane labor can carry meaning.
By afternoon, villagers gather to discuss storage plans and upcoming planting cycles. Some point toward fields needing irrigation, others check inventory in the granaries, while children mimic adults, moving small baskets in a playful echo of labor. The scene is calm, organized, and deeply rhythmic, the culmination of months of work, yet quietly intertwined with anticipation for the future.
Historians still argue about the degree of centralization in grain storage and distribution. Some evidence points to organized communal granaries, possibly for shared access or trade, while other findings indicate household-level storage predominated. Either scenario reflects careful planning, social cohesion, and an intimate understanding of resources.
As evening falls, the sun dips low, casting long amber rays across the village. Farmers and children carry the final baskets of grains to storage, gently stacking jars and bundles with care. The fields now rest, the furrows calm, and the irrigation channels reflect the soft twilight sky. You sit against a sun-warmed brick, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant bleating of goats, and the faint hum of evening life settling into rest. The cycle of agriculture, planting, tending, harvesting, and storing is complete, yet ever continuing. You close your eyes and imagine the grains safely stored, the water channels resting, the tools polished and ready, and the village breathing quietly in preparation for the next season. Civilization thrives not just on labor or ingenuity alone, but on patience, care, and attention to the smallest details of daily life. The wind-down begins as night settles gently. The village is enveloped in a soft, protective hush, punctuated only by the occasional bird or insect. You feel your breath slow, your body soften into the rhythm of the land. Every earthen wall, every carefully stacked granary, every glimmering canal carries a sense of continuity and calm. There is reassurance in the knowledge that human hands, guided by observation and experience, can shape life so gently and so effectively. Slowly, thoughts of bustling fields, flowing water, and soft cotton fibers fade into a quiet calm. You imagine the stars reflected in the still reservoirs, the moonlight dancing across furrows, and the faint whisper of wind brushing through reeds along the canals. The land breathes beneath the watchful care of its people, a slow, steady lullaby meant to soothe both body and mind. Even as you drift, the lessons linger: patience, meticulous care, respect for natural rhythms, and the quiet, persistent work of sustaining life. You feel comforted by the thought that, long ago, people understood these principles and wove them into every action, from sowing seeds to harvesting cotton, from tending water to storing grains. Civilization is gentle here, persistent and enduring. Now you allow yourself to sink fully into relaxation. The village hums softly in the distance, the fields shimmer under the fading light, and the enduring pulse of human care continues quietly beneath the surface. You are calm, connected, and ready to let the day's rhythm carry you into sleep. The sun has finally disappeared behind distant hills, leaving the village bathed in soft twilight. You feel the air cool gently against your skin, carrying the faint aroma of earth, grains, and distant fires. Every field, every canal, every granary rests in quiet harmony, a testament to patient hands and enduring care. You sink slowly into the rhythm of the evening, letting the soft sounds of the village, the whispering leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the gentle trickle of water, lull you further into calm. Imagine the grains safely stored, the cotton fibers tucked away,
and the irrigation channels glimmering faintly under the moon. Every action of the day has been purposeful yet serene, creating a sense of order and reassurance. You can feel the cycles of life extending far beyond your presence. The earth nurtures the seeds, the water nourishes the fields, and the people maintain balance through quiet attention and thoughtful care. Allow your thoughts to drift, carrying you along the gentle pulse of the Indus Valley. The warm earth, the smooth clay, the soft swish of water. Each sensation blends into a calming symphony. There is comfort in knowing that civilization, in its earliest forms, thrived on patience, observation, and respect for natural rhythms. The lessons of slow, deliberate care are universal, whispering across millennia. As your body softens and your mind unwinds, visualize the village under a silver moon, all work paused, every seed and tool resting, waiting for the next gentle cycle. You are part of this calm through imagination, lulled by the enduring quiet of human diligence. Now, dim the lights. Let your mind float with the rhythm of ancient fields and drift into sleep, carried by the timeless lullaby of the Indus Valley. End of script. Sweet dreams.